For most of the 20th century, scientists believed your intelligence was carved in stone. You were born with a number. It followed you through school, through labels, through quiet comparisons. And if that number was low, the ceiling felt permanent. But here's the unsettling truth. That belief was incomplete, because your brain is not a static machine. It is a living system, and living systems change when pressured correctly. For decades, IQ was treated as destiny, a fixed measure of potential, but researchers began noticing something strange. When people were placed in demanding mental environments, their performance shifted, not slightly. Significantly, the brain was adapting. You can see this most clearly in children who move from deprived environments into enriched ones. Language improves, memory sharpens, problem-solving accelerates, measured IQ rises. If intelligence were fixed, that shouldn't happen. The explanation lies in your brain rewires itself based on repeated challenge. Neural pathways strengthen with use. Connections that fire together, wire together. This is not motivational language. It is biological reality. When you learn a new skill, struggle through confusion, or wrestle with a difficult concept, you are not just storing information. You are physically restructuring neural networks. White matter density can change. You feel that discomfort as frustration, but neurologically, it is growth. Here is where most people misunderstand intelligence. They confuse performance with capacity. If something feels hard, they assume they lack ability, so they withdraw. That withdrawal becomes a habit. Over time, avoidance protects your ego, but it also protects your limitations. You stay inside familiar tasks. You stop exposing your brain to strain, and without strain, there is no adaptation. The small but measurable increases in IQ, observed in certain studies, often correlate with deliberate cognitive engagement, learning complex instruments, solving unfamiliar problems, operating in mentally demanding environments. It is not magic, it is repeated stress followed by recovery. Think of intelligence less like height and more like cardiovascular fitness. You inherit a range, but within that range, effort shifts outcomes. You notice this in your own life? When you revisit a subject you once struggled with, sometimes it suddenly feels clearer. Not because the material changed. You did. Your brain built scaffolding in the background. Tiny structural adjustments, new associative pathways, stronger pattern recognition. And the more you challenge it, the more efficient it becomes at learning itself. That's the deeper proof. Intelligence is not just about stored knowledge. It's about learning speed, adaptability, abstraction, and those qualities respond to pressure. But there's a psychological barrier. If you believe your IQ is fixed, you interpret struggle as evidence of limitation. If you believe it is adaptable, you interpret struggle as part of the process. That interpretation changes behavior, and behavior changes outcomes. Over years, small differences in cognitive habits compound. One person leans toward challenge, another retreats toward safety. The gap widens quietly, not because one was born superior, but because one kept rewiring. This does not mean everyone can become a genius. Biological ranges exist. Genetics matter. But within your range, there is movement, more than most people realize. The real danger of the fixed IQ mythos, not scientific inaccuracy, it is psychological resignation. When you assume limits are permanent, you stop testing them. When you stop testing them, they become permanent in practice. But when you expose your mind to sustained complexity, when you allow confusion instead of fleeing it, when you practice thinking deeply instead of consuming passively, your brain responds. Quietly, gradually, physically. That is the proof. Not in slogans, not in overnight transformations, but in measurable structural change across time. So the question shifts. If your intelligence is not fixed, what would you attempt differently? What subject would you revisit? What difficulty would you tolerate a little longer? Because the ceiling may not be where you thought it was. If this perspective challenged something you've always believed about yourself, stay curious with us, subscribe, and continue exploring the hidden psychological patterns. Quietly shape who you become.